all the coverage for you right here on Sports Map Radio. As it comes up, we'll hear some reaction from you, 1-800-224-2004. Whenever your favorite team steps up to the virtual podium, we will hear it, and we will talk about it here on Sports Map all night, with the commissioner being at the ESPN headquarters. Imagine that. I'm running that one too, just like the college football playoff. Okay, I digress. I got to get into this Greg Marshall thing a little bit later on in the program as well. I don't know what kind of precedent it sets across the NCAA when you can be investigated for abusing players and then walk away with a $7 million plus bonus, or at least severance package. What kind of look does that give you in the climate that we're in? Well, I'll get into that in a little while, but it is the second hour of the program on a Tuesday. That means it's top 5, bottom 5 in the National Football League. Ready to rock and ready to give it to you right here on Sports Map Radio. We start with the top 5 because we are optimists on this show, not pessimists. We're going to talk about the Arizona Cardinals a little bit later on this hour. However, Andrew, I'll start it right here. The Arizona Cardinals, despite the big win against the Buffalo Bills, coming back from 23-9 down, Kyler Murray being the most electrifying player in the league right now, they narrowly missed my top 5. I shouldn't say narrowly. They were like number 8 to me when I was going through these rankings earlier on today and kind of putting it together. However, the 3 to 5 range for me was the most difficult to handicap when I look at the National Football League right now. So I'll start it with the number 5 team in the NFL, and it's strange ordering, I understand. However, I got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at number 5. The only reason I have them there is because there's just some volatility in that group that I'm not sure exists in other locker rooms. And to get blown out 38-3 at home is one thing. Then to go out onto the road and combat a night on the tarmac in the airport, trying to get to Charlotte, get into your hotel room at, midnight the night before a game, and come out and just drum a team that I think is really improving in Carolina with Matt Rule at the head of that team. They didn't have Christian McCaffrey. That's a huge difference maker for Carolina. But the way Tampa Bay came out and answered the bell, quieted the doubters, silenced the noise, and then went on and put up 46 on Carolina this weekend, they had to be in my top 5. They just beat out the Buffalo Bills, who just couldn't finish in Arizona. And that's the reason why the Buffalo Bills didn't make this list for me. We've seen this before now with Buffalo. Fool me once, shame on you. That was when they gave up a 25-point lead against Los Angeles and should have lost that game. Buffalo should have lost that game. That was a horrible call in the end zone, giving Buffalo new life after a 4th down. They had 1st and goal from the 1. Josh Allen throws a touchdown pass to the tight end in the back of the end zone. Rest is history. They win by 4. They should have lost that game, blew a 25-point lead. Then you go on the road. You're beating Kyler Murray. You've got your foot firmly on the proverbial neck of the opponent. You're ready to finish them and couldn't close. They just couldn't close it. They had a great chance. You bring the whole team down, as Josh Allen did, score the go-ahead touchdown after going down in the game. You score the touchdown with Stephon Diggs in the corner of the end zone. Go up by 4, 30-something seconds remaining. And Kyler Murray gets a prayer answered by the best receiver in football in DeAndre Hopkins. You got to be able to close to get into this list. That's why the number 4 team on my list is the Green Bay Packers. I understand they got 2 losses on the year. They are the number 1 team so far, record-wise and stat-wise, if you look at where the playoffs and how it would end if it ended today. But looking at the way Green Bay plays, they're front runners. They are. Their defense is one that wants to pin their ears back, get pressure on the quarterback, and throughout the season, I don't know if it can play in a 16-game regular season. But once you get to January, I don't know how clean cut of a recipe that is. I'm not worried about winning by 4 against Jacksonville, right? There's going to be tight games. Pittsburgh got taken to the limits. They were down 10 on the road against Dallas. It's a 100-yard field, 52 yards in length, an oblong ball. Everybody gets paid, same salary cap. You're going to lose games to teams that are lesser than you, right? Talking about that same Jacksonville team earlier today, Mike Tomlin, who's one of the most well-respected coaches in the National Football League, I think he's a genius, comes out and says, hey, this isn't a Big Ten team taking on a MAC school. All right? We're all professionals. They get paid too. You can't mail in a game like this. So Green Bay goes sleepwalking through a Week 10 opponent who was far inferior than you, but to still get a win is a credit to what that team looks like. And oh, by the way, 25 regular season games. Head coach Matt LaFleur of the Green Bay Packers is 20-5. There have only been 10 other coaches that have done that. 3 of which, George Seifert, as well as Paul Brown. He was 22-3 in his first 25 games at the helm. So those are staggering numbers. And to do it with a guy who, going into this with the Packers a year ago, people believed that Aaron Rodgers was going to be borderline uncoachable in that situation. LaFleur has stemmed the tide. They're doing it without their second best wide receiver for the majority of the season. However good you think Allen Lazard is, Green Bay is going to be my number 4 team because that pass rush is legit. They're going to get healthy at the cornerback spot. They're a really, really good football team. They're going to be in the thick of this thing. And this is where the funkiness comes. The 3, I got the New Orleans Saints. And it's different because right now, going into this week for New Orleans, there's more questions than ever before. Who's going to play quarterback? What do you think of eating W's with Jameis Winston? All I see right now is Alvin Kamara going on a different level. All right, they're getting Michael Thomas a little bit back into the fold, into the mix of that offense. It's going to be steadier throughout the next couple of weeks, but also the couple of weeks off that I think Drew Brees ends up taking, I think he's going to be off for about 2 to 3 weeks. That might be the best thing for Drew Brees in the long run. We saw what he did last year with 5 weeks off. Too much time for Teddy Bridgewater as he came in 5-0, and Drew Brees was refreshed and as lethal as he'd ever been late into the season. I think that's the same thing here. And I think New Orleans has the best defense out of those 3 teams, Tampa Bay, Green Bay, and New Orleans. That's why they're my number 3 team in the NFL right now. Number 2, no change at the top for me. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers sitting at 9-0, man. I can't put them just above the world champs because I still am not fully sold on that offense being able to score with some of the most prolific offenses in the league. However, when you're holding everybody to 24, 21 points a game, Ben Roethlisberger and that offense doesn't have to score 40. They don't. They can put up 30 and win most games because their defense is just that good. And they were on a bye, so don't let the recency bias get away from you. The Kansas City Chiefs are the best team in football. They're only getting better. The 2-headed monster that I believe is going to be as lethal as any come playoff time with Le'Veon Bell, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and oh, by the way, it's all orchestrated by Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. They're unbelievable, and their defense is so much better than it was last year. Kansas City, my number 1 team in pro football. Andrew Carlson, yours back in Houston, Texas.
So our lists are similar in that they've got the same 5 teams, just a slight difference in the order. Number 5, I've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm like you. I'm just not 100% sold on them because there have just been way too many peaks and valleys with this team.
Great way to put it.
They look unstoppable. I mean, they look like the best team in the league when they're on things.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they're not good, you get what we saw against the Saints. Well, fortunately for them, that roadblock that is the Saints probably is not going to be the same sort of roadblock this postseason because Drew Brees, at least in my opinion, probably isn't coming back to play. And so I've got the Bucs at number 5. Number 4, I've got those New Orleans Saints, and I only have them behind the Packers because of the Drew Brees injury. This might be a little too much like old school BCS college football voting sort of process, but it's my top 5, so I don't really care if that's your complaint.
Yeah, don't worry. There's no computer rankings. I like it.
So, look, the reality is the Saints are probably a better overall team than the Packers, but because of the fact that Drew Brees, in my estimation, is not going to be back for the rest of the season, maybe
Ooh.
won't be back, period, ever if he decides to retire at the end of this year. I just can't, in good faith, put Jameis Winston as leading a team at the quarterback position ahead of Aaron Rodgers. I just can't do it. And so for that reason and that reason alone, I've got the Saints at number 4. I've got the Packers at number 3. They weren't exactly convincing against Jacksonville. Actually, I'd say they were far from convincing against Jacksonville. But at the end of the day, they got the win. And you know what? That's what good teams do. Over the course of a 16-game NFL season, there are going to be weeks where you play down to the level of competition or the competition brings up their game to meet yours. And that's what the Jacksonville Jaguars did last Sunday. I mean, they played a damn good game of football and came really close to going into Lambeau and shocking the world. So I credit the Jaguars more than I'm disappointed with the Packers. I think they bounce back. I think they continue to roll in that NFC North. At number 2, I've got the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm still not 100 entirely percent convinced by this team, which is crazy to say.
Me neither.
9-0, but look, it doesn't matter if they keep winning. They're going to be just fine. They don't need my approval. And then at number 1, what more needs to be said about Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs? Look like the best, most complete team in football. And would you look at that? They've probably got the MVP favorite on their team. The guy was the betting favorite coming into the year. 4 weeks in, everybody wrote him off. They were talking about Russ and maybe Josh Allen.
There was great
everybody
value
else.
there.
And yeah, and look, we're in week 11, and the guy who was the favorite at the start of the season is the favorite now.
And I don't know how much the interceptions are going to hurt Aaron Rodgers. Showpot has him at 20-1 in the beginning of the year, so we're definitely hoping for that investment. However, you're right. Betting favorite was Pat Mahomes in the beginning of the year. It's hard to say that it's not him right now. 25 touchdowns, 1 interception. Are you kidding me? That's stupid numbers. Kyler Murray getting back into the conversation. He was 16-1, I want to say, in the beginning of the year. So I got to get back before we take a timeout and get to the bottom 5 on the other side. You may be burying the lead there with your Drew Brees take. You don't know if we see Drew Brees 5 fractured ribs reportedly and a punctured lung or a collapsed lung, excuse me. You don't know that we see Drew Brees at all the rest of the season.
I mean, I would just be surprised. I know that he's got time, and if they get to the week 2 of the postseason, then I think you definitely see Drew Brees. But man, at his age, dealing with a punctured lung and all those fractured ribs, I understand. We've heard the quotes from Drew Brees. It's not a pain issue. It's more of what is my body physically capable of doing. I don't know how much he's going to heal, and I don't have the medical expertise to say one way or the other. But just gauging from the injury and what I saw, I don't know if his body's going to be able to physically take the toll of playing in an NFL game again, at least this season.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I took an anatomy class one time, so I am pretty much an expert on the human body. I would agree with you though. Like that is when I was reading that earlier, and he tweets out last night, "Who Dat Nation? I got the best medical team in the world. We'll be back in no time." I'm like, dude, I don't know what no time is, but I gotta think it's close to a month. Like 5 fractured ribs, and you're playing quarterback. You're not getting as many hits as you might be even 5 years ago. However, when you get hit, you get rocked when you're the quarterback. So that's another part of it that is incredibly intriguing. So we'll get into that a little bit more because I got to get into that too because I don't think your logic is very flawed on Drew Brees. All right, bottom 5 in the National Football League. Straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. We're back in 3 minutes on Sports Map Radio. Thanks for hanging out at Sports Map all night. Bill Schmidt alongside my guy Andrew Carlson inside our O'Reilly Auto Parts studios. O'Reilly Auto Parts, better prices every single day. Pharrell on the bench comes up right after we're done here at the end of the program. We still got an hour and a half with you, so sit right there. Don't think you're going anywhere on the free Sports Map radio app. Guys, O'Reilly Auto Parts will not allow you to use poor wiper blades. They just won't do it. And the best part is, if they're chattering, skipping, or squeaking, don't compromise the visibility with streaks or smearing on your windows. Because when it's time to replace wiper blades, you go to O'Reilly Auto Parts, and the best part is they have the best selection that you can imagine. The professional parts people help you find the exact right wiper blade. You say, here's my make and model. What do I need? They got it for you. And then if you're car illiterate like myself, O'Reilly Auto Parts will install your wiper blades free of charge. Who's doing that? O'Reilly Auto Parts is. No one else. O'Reilly Auto Parts, better prices every day. Top 5, bottom 5. We're in the midst of it right now here on Sports Map all night, talking about some really just atrocious teams in the National Football League when we get into this part of the schedule. We were just discussing on the other side the top 5 teams in the NFL. The same 5 teams being the Buccaneers, Packers, Saints, Steelers, and Chiefs in order for myself. For Andrew Carlson, flip-flop 3 and 4. And as a Green Bay Packer fan, I very much appreciate him doing that. But the Drew Brees conversation that you brought up, Andrew, we got to get into in about 10 minutes because we got a little bit of time. We're going to talk some Kyler Murray. We're going to hear one of my favorite broadcasters in the game, Dave Pasch, call the Hail Murray on the other side as well. But that Drew Brees conversation into how this affects him for the rest of the season, fascinating thought that you brought into my mind, and it had not even ventured if we even see Drew Brees again this year, and there's a real possibility that we don't. Okay, bottom 5 in the National Football League. I'll rip through these quickly, and my guy Andrew Carlson will give you his as well here inside the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios. Number 28 for me, and they do not have the worst record even in their division, but I'm watching the Denver Broncos this weekend up against our guy Raider Cody's Las Vegas Raiders. And as much as I enjoy watching John Gruden's team in Las Vegas, and I do because I think they play complementary football that a lot of teams don't necessarily do. They run the ball really well with Josh Jacobs along with Deontay Booker. They can get at you in a multitude of different ways. They got nice targets that are receivers out of the backfield, as well as dudes like a Hunter Renfrow who can just find a space and get open. They're making Nelson Aguilar a legitimate option as well. Henry Ruggs is just scratching the surface of the kind of player that he's going to be. So, like, there's all parts of this team that I really like watching. They straight up bullied the Denver Broncos this weekend, 37-12. Drew Lock is fun. If anybody's going to rap on the sidelines, I'm going to be a fan of it. However, there's a lot more flash than actual context there with Denver. They're beat up. Vic Fangio, I don't know if makes it through this offseason. I don't even know if he sees Tuesday after the NFL season. I think he's gone. And honestly, John Elway hasn't done enough to rebuild that organization since their Super Bowl championship a few years ago. I got Denver at 28, Washington at 29. However, their front four is really, really good. We know what their defense can do. They give up all these yards last week to Detroit. And if it wasn't for a roughing the passer penalty with 16 seconds left when Detroit got the football back after my guy Alex Smith brought him back from 24-3 down, scored 3 touchdowns, brought his team all the way back, has completely earned that job, and I hope cemented himself there for the rest of the season. Washington, I got to put them in the bottom 5. They're just not very good, but they are exciting to watch, and it's kind of the struggle that we've had with the New York Giants that I don't want to put them in there, but sometimes I've had to. Now the Giants are for sure out of there, at least for the next couple of weeks. I think they're out of there for good, and that is a good thing for Giants fans because they got the quarterback, they got the head coach. Number 30 is the Jacksonville Jaguars. It looks like Jake Luton is going to continue to be the starter right there. Gardner Minshew's not quite ready. James Robinson's really fun. The rest of that team, is just kind of there. Doug Marone's a dead man walking when you talk about a coach at the head coach spot in the NFL. Number 31 is the Dallas Cowboys. Jerry Jones can tell us how much and how quickly they're going to get fixed with Andy Dalton back at the helm of that team. I just don't see it. They don't fight nearly the way that they should. They're so beat up front, and that's really the heart and soul of their team. Number 32, you guessed it. It's the New York Football Jets, because I don't even know if the Jets like playing football at this point. Like that's kind of where I'm at with the gangrene. Andrew, what about you?
So, couple different teams in here.
That's what I like
had
here.
to put in here that you didn't, and you know why I have to put in there. Number 28, I've got the Washington Football Team. They play hard, but they're not good.
Yep.
They've got less talent than the Giants, and that's really all that needs to be said. They're one of those teams that plays hard, but they're just they ain't got the bullets in the chamber, man. They
Exactly.
can't with these teams. They just can't. Number 29, I've got my Houston Texans.
He had to put him in there.
I had to put him in there. They just lost to the Browns in a 10-7 football. You were getting shut out by the Cleveland Browns through 57 minutes of a football game. That cannot happen. I don't care what Myles Garrett does. That Browns team was giving up, I think, upwards of 30 points a game, and you just walked in there and scored 7. I don't care how windy it was. Terrible offensive performance. You deserve to be in the bottom 5. The only reason you're not last is because they're even worse teams in this league. Number 30, I've got the Dallas Cowboys. Their carousel at quarterback, not much more needs to be said. Number 31, I've got the Jags, solely because the Texans, that's the only team they beat. They got 2 wins against the Jags. They have to be in the bottom 2. And then at number 32, what else needs to be said? The New York Jets, Adam Gase.
They're so
terrible,
bad.
Terrible.
They're it bad. It blows my mind how bad a football team can be at this point in time. And even when they were close to getting a W on Monday Night Football, they still messed it up. All right, we got to get into a little bit more of this Drew Brees thing, but the Hail Murray was beautiful. The call by Dave Pasch, even better. Play it for you next on Sports Map All Night.
Got to launch it. He does. Left side into the end zone. Jump ball. And it is. Is it caught? Is it caught? Oh my goodness, it's caught. DeAndre Hopkins caught it. He caught it for a touchdown with 1 second left. I can't believe it. You've got to be joking me. Hopkins reaches up with 3 defenders around him and pulls it in. And the Cardinals lead it 32-30 with a second left.
That is Dave Pasch, along with his guy Ron Wolfley on the call for the Arizona Cardinals on 98.7 FM. He goes, "You've got to be joking me." That is just an absolutely epic call by Dave Pasch. I don't even know how else you describe what we saw down in Arizona this past weekend with the Cardinals coming back and knocking off the Buffalo Bills, coming back from 23-9 down. They hadn't been able to get themselves into the end zone. And my favorite part of the way and why Arizona was able to come back, they did it with Kyler's legs more than anything in the end of the game, right? We've seen young quarterbacks take the proverbial next step, right? Come into their own in the offense, get themselves to a different level of understanding in the offense. Some head coaches like to compare playing in the NFL to like taking college courses, right? You get into the 300 level classes. You're understanding the offense to a different degree. You're formulating game plans at a different level. You're just understanding the game differently, right? I don't even know if that's what Kyler Murray does at this point, and it's one of the reasons why I love watching him. Dude just goes out and plays. And he reminds me of the kid on the playground that you play with in high school and in middle school and in grade school, where it doesn't matter what you're playing, but he's the first pick. He's the first pick when you start selecting teams, right? All right, Andrew and Billy are captains, and first thing is, all right, Kyler. Well, we're playing basketball. Yeah, Kyler. All right, you're playing kickball, Kyler. You're playing badminton, Kyler, because he's just that stupidly gifted and athletic. He's not the biggest dude. He might be the fastest, but it's like Barry Sanders playing quarterback. The elusiveness that I see out of Kyler Murray is next level stuff. Guy's thrown for 2,300 yards this year. He's also ran for 600. And the last dude to be this good running and passing was the MVP of the league last year in Lamar Jackson. They're two very different guys. Their playing styles are very, very different, right? You can't tell me that you look at Lamar and see Kyler. Just the stats would tell you more of how similar they are. But when Kyler knows he needs to take over a game, he's got that athletic ability and that athleticism and that, I don't even know if it's a desired kind of thing. He's just got that type, but he's got the it factor. And it's kind of lazy to say, but he's got that it factor where he is not going to let his team lose if he has anything to say about it. To watch him take over that game, loft a prayer into the end zone, and if it's not for the best receiver in football, you don't know if it comes down. These two teams, Buffalo and Arizona, that played this past weekend, I think totally mirror themselves in how they've constructed their team, especially this past offseason. Now, we're going to get to see Arizona in 2 nights on Thursday Night Football as they have a rematch against Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks, right? 37-34. It was a thriller on Sunday Night Football, 3 weeks ago that we got treated to, and that was the first time Seattle had lost. Now, don't look now, 4 weeks ago, because Seattle's now lost 3 of their last 4. So you're feeling a little bit different about the opponent because Arizona can put points on you so quickly. So can Seattle, I understand. But look at how Buffalo and look at how Arizona improved their team this past year. You got a young quarterback who's somewhat of a Mustang. You don't put a saddle on a Mustang. What you do is you get him a trainer that's going to help you out. That's going to move them allow them to be their own guy, be themselves, play their own game, run their own way, but you give them as much on the outside, as much supplemental help as you possibly can. Buffalo goes out, trades a bunch of picks for Stephon Diggs, and said, here you go, Josh Allen. Go have fun. This is a guy that you can throw it to at any point in time, wherever on the football field, whatever down and distance, and you know he's going to be able to make a play. Just so happens that they had to trade a first and a myriad of other picks. DeAndre Hopkins came for David Johnson in a second-round pick. Okay, I get that. But Arizona was the one that stuck their neck out and said, we got to go do this. Steve Keim was kind of talking about it with Cliff Kingsbury, their GM. And Kingsbury, I don't know if it was in an interview that I was reading or if I heard it on a broadcast or on a podcast, whatever it was. But when Cliff Kingsbury found out that it was a possibility that DeAndre Hopkins was going to be available, Steve Keim said he was getting calls from Kingsbury 1, 2 to 3 times a day saying, are we doing it? Did you do it yet? Did you call again? Are we changing the offer? What's the situation? He was willing to give up 2 first-round picks, Kingsbury. Now, good thing, only a couple of teams are advantageous enough to put a head coach in charge of the decision-making process with the entire front office, because that's what happens. You get in love with a player, you fall in love with a player, you fall in love with a guy, a talent, a skill set, and you do anything you can to have them. That's why you need a buffer. However, Kingsbury, seeing the developmental stage that Kyler Murray was at, you need to have a go-to guy you can trust with the football at any point in the game, any down and distance, any situation. Murray, now getting 9 games in with DeAndre Hopkins, fully understanding what DeAndre Hopkins is in this league, walks you through that Hail Mary and echoes exactly why the Arizona Cardinals go out and trade for DeAndre Hopkins this offseason.
You know, the play was designed for me to get out left. They had a guy containing, had to make him miss. And then, you know, as funny as it sounds, I felt like, you know, it was the only person I saw down there was Hop. You know, let it go, let him give him a chance. And, you know, it's funny, everybody, all they saw was black gloves arising, you know, from everybody. It was like, it was a group of 4 people, and all they saw was black gloves. So I was just glad he caught the ball.
It's funny, but it's true. You sometimes when you're that dialed in on one guy, you have that kind of trust level with somebody, you only see him. We've seen a lot of dynamic quarterbacks have that one weapon where 3rd and 10, you know where the ball's going. It doesn't matter how well it's covered. Just go out and try to stop it. Try to stop DeAndre Hopkins. You just can't at this point. And when you got a guy like that with that kind of trust level developing, a dynamic playmaker that can get it done and shake Mario Addison out of his shoes, who just barely loses contain and allows Murray to get out into the outside and at least get a look at it to throw it deep. There's only a few guys in this league that have played in this league that could shake that defensive end, get himself to a position, to a platform to spin and chuck and get it to his guy down the field like Kyler Murray did to DeAndre Hopkins. And then DeAndre Hopkins, I think the best receiver in all of football, no slight to Devontae Adams, Julio Jones, anybody else. This is what the best player on the planet says about the catch.
You know, in basketball terminology, that's what they call this. You know, when somebody get dunked on. It was on 3 people. Yeah. It was you know, they were in position. It was just a better catch by eye.
By eye. I don't know if it's D-Hop. I know Steve Weish coined this on the NFL Network yesterday when I was listening to him say it. Steve Weish played in the league. Andrew, I think we start calling D-Hop I-Hop. Dude's always open. 24/7. Grab what you need. It's right here for you. And that was just an absolute miraculous play, sure. but it's one of those that is, I think, the culmination of what that organization did. And 6-3, that catch puts them into the number one spot in that division. Who saw Arizona being the number one team in that division this year? Whatever you thought about the Rams, you can't predict injury and all that's gone wrong for the 49ers. I expected Arizona to take a leap. And when you go and get the best wide receiver in the game, you should expect a leap in production. But to double down with your new franchise, Arizona took a huge swing with Cliff Kingsbury. And I don't even know if Cliff Kingsbury is a great coach, right? But he's a great guy for this exact position. And sometimes you're not the most qualified candidate to get a job. And not always do you have the best interview. Seemed like Cliff Kingsbury had a great interview when he was in Arizona, but sometimes it's just the right time. Sometimes it's just the perfect storm. It was the perfect situation for Cliff to take over this offense, take over this team. His name was on fire. Arizona had the number one overall pick. They're looking at Josh Rosen saying, he's nice, but he's not this kid. But now let's go get him somebody that can take him to the next level. Steve Wilkes didn't deserve to get blown out the way he did, but his team got the number one overall pick for a reason. They weren't good. And not being afraid to make the gutsy move. I was going to use another phrase, but I didn't know if the FCC in certain areas that we're on the Sports Map Radio Network would like me to. But to make that franchise-altering decision to take the lottery ticket chance to be one of the best teams for the next decade. And they're 6-3. Their defense isn't great, right? They got a couple of nice pieces in the secondary. They are really missing Chandler Jones, though. And then I look and see they are going to get Chandler Jones back next year. He might be the best pass rusher of this generation that nobody talks about. Like, the way the Cardinals are positioned, and we're going to see it again on Thursday night, and you can watch that offense in all its glory. Chase Edmonds, Kenyon Drake, Hopkins, Kirk, and oh, by the way, Larry Fitzgerald. They're a scary team to watch, man. And if they get placed against New Orleans, against Tampa, against Seattle in the playoffs, against my Green Bay Packers, that's a scary team coming into any venue come playoff time. But the way it sits right now, might have to go out to the desert. It's a crazy situation. It's a crazy league. 2 years ago, they had the number one overall pick. Now they're fighting for control of their division a couple of nights away. And special seasons are made of special stories, and special moments build those stories. That was a special story and a special moment that's culminating in a really, really special season for the Arizona Cardinals. Coming right back, we're here on Sports Map all night. Bill Schmidt, Andrew Carlson, hanging out with you on Sports Map Radio. Got Andrew Carlson hanging out as well. I'm Bill Schmidt. Thanks for being here. Guys, The Athletic delivers every sports story that matters. It's my favorite part of it, that matters. Because some stuff's fluff. That's not what The Athletic's all about. The Athletic has full-time local writers dedicated to your teams, providing breaking news, in-depth analysis, and exclusive stories you can't find anywhere else. Plus, national names like Robert Mays, Stuart Mandel, Jake Seeley, David Aldrich, Ken Rosenthal, and Lindsey Jones provide unrivaled league-wide perspective and insight, all personalized and ad-free, which is my favorite part. Whether you're looking for a fantasy football edge or a long-term outlook on your NBA team, The Athletic has the coverage you need. Subscribe today for $1 a week at theathletic.com/radio week. Once again, that's theathletic.com/radio week. Top 5, bottom 5 of the National Football League was this hour. If you missed it, you can go back and check out the podcast once it gets up at the end of this hour as well. So many different teams tomorrow night are going to be looking a lot different after the NBA draft. We are going to give you as much information as we can tomorrow night during the NFL draft or the NBA draft, but it's such a condensed offseason. The draft is tomorrow night. Free agency starts up on Friday. Trades are flying all over the place. This hour of Sports Map Radio presented by Rocket Mortgage. When you need certainty in the home buying process with a loan that fits your life, Rocket can. Come on back with us. Going to hear about one of the craziest stories that could be happening and an icon maybe being birthed. It's coming up next on Sports Map All Night.
The O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios. Here's Bill Schmidt.
Hour number 3 of Sports Map All Night is live with you right here on the all-new Sports Map Radio Network. Appreciate you hanging out, giving us a shout. 1-800-224-2004. Which of these NBA moves makes the most sense to you? I was having a lot of trouble last night as Andrew Carlson and I were hanging out with you inside these O'Reilly Auto Parts studios. I was having a lot of trouble as a Milwaukee Bucks fan and observer, I guess media member, show host. I did a lot of post-game shows about this Milwaukee Bucks team. I was having a lot of trouble digesting giving up 5 picks, 3 first-round picks, and 2 pick swaps for Drew Holiday and his expiring contract of $28 million. However, Andrew, I have calmed down since last night because when the news broke at about 10:30 during that segment, right? You came on, you're like, we got some breaking news, gave me the news. I got excited. I went, let's go. Let's go. And then I heard the compensation and I got a little defensive, got a little bit frustrated. I will admit, not one of my brighter moments here hosting Sports Map All Night. However, the contract is the part of it that makes a lot more sense to me. They were able to get out of an Eric Bledsoe contract that I didn't really know a whole lot of people were going to take on. But that's where this currency of first-round picks in the NBA is so interesting to me. Like tomorrow night, we're going to see teams legitimately buying second-round picks. Just giving a team, $2 million for their 38th overall pick. $3.5 million, I know, was a second-round pick a couple of years ago that the Bulls got Jordan Bell for. Or the Warriors ended up giving $3.5 million to the Chicago Bulls for their pick. It ended up being Jordan Bell. And it's like there's going to be trades that way, but first-round picks are just like, oh, give them 3 of them. So you take this bad contract of us, and then we can also get a good player in return, no doubt. But there's just a weird sense of currency that these picks end up being because of how the guaranteed money works with the salary cap. It's fascinating stuff. We'll get into a lot more of it coming up tomorrow night. But next is one of the new top coaches in the National Football League flourishing right in front of our eyes. Keep it right here at Sports Map All Night. Dolphins go to 3-0 with Tua as their leader at the quarterback position. Hand firmly in air. Oh, sorry. The folks on the live stream that are watching. Right hand. Right hand firmly in air. I doubted it. I didn't like the move. I didn't think it made sense. I thought it was felt like a front office push of one Brian Flores. However, man, the Miami Dolphins just may mess around and win this NFC or AFC East, dude. They just might do it. They've now won 6 of their last 7 games. The only loss coming to the 6-3 Seattle Seahawks at home in a game that Ryan Fitzpatrick was the starter of. Maybe one of those where you throw yourself out of it. 2 picks by Fitzpatrick, no touchdowns. He ran one in. It was a tough game, kind of a sleepwalking game. However, they've blown out the 49ers since then. They shut out the Jets. They beat the Rams and turned Jared Goff over, I want to say 4 times in that game. Made his life a living hell in that game. We're all over Goff, sacking him left and right. Turned the ball over 3 times in the first half of that game. Then they beat Arizona in Arizona's own place at their own game. A game into the 30s is not the way Miami really, I don't think that's the recipe for the Dolphins winning games here in 2020. However, they beat one of the better teams, better young offensive teams in the game in their own way by scoring and outscoring them. They have one of the best defensive units in the league right now. And they're only getting better, and I truly believe it all starts with the guy calling the shots in the locker room. What Brian Flores has done so far as the head coach of the Miami Dolphins is anything short of spectacular for me. Coming into last year, the tank for Tua mantra was so prevalent across the national media. Everybody was yelling it. Everybody was saying it. Miami Dolphin fans that I talked to were fully on board, invested in the thought of, hey, go 3-13, trade Minkah Fitzpatrick because we're trading everybody else. Go get a couple more first-round picks, get some first-rounders from Pittsburgh. We'll ship off Laramie Tunzel and Kenny Stills, get 2 first-round picks from Houston. They got all this ammo, all this firepower, and at the center of it, you still have to play football games. It's easy when we sit up here watching the games from afar and kind of distance ourselves from what the product ultimately is and how that team needs to come together and achieve the goal of, creating a different kind of culture. Culture is a buzzword in the NFL. I know a lot of people that I talk to in sports hate the culture word in pro football, but it is so important in this game. The way that this game gets played, it is so immensely important to have a winning attitude and a winning culture that will continue on long after a certain player's gone, right? In the midst of adversity that your team is ultimately going to face. It happens to everybody. To be able to say, bleep those guys in the front office that don't want us to have all of our ammunition. Forget the guys in the fan base that say, I hope they lose all 16 games so we get the number 1 overall pick. That stuff comes from one guy leading meetings, one guy leading the team out of the tunnel, one guy leading practice, and it all comes back to Brian Flores. To finish the way the Dolphins did last year, winning 5 of their last 9 games, 3 of their last 5, winning an overtime game against another team that was battling for the first overall pick in the Cincinnati Bengals. It was pretty clear at that point that the Dolphins weren't going to have the first overall pick. Those 2 teams fought, and Miami was just the better coached team in that game. Then they go to New England in week 17 with nothing but pride on the line and also, helping out their guy in Brian Flores, who you knew wanted to win that game against his former team, against his former boss. You knew he wanted to get that W. And they went out and knocked Tom Brady into wild card weekend. Like, that started last year in the midst of everybody saying, forget about Miami. They're done. They're not very good. They're not going to be able to be as relevant until maybe, 2022. With all that draft capital, then they'll finally, make some noise. Then maybe they'll have enough pieces where they can be a legitimate contender. I don't know that Miami's a Super Bowl contender. I don't think they're that close. However, I think they can be a playoff team this season. And when given the opportunity to run an organization, to be the head coach, and in 2 years, you have your team 3 games over 500, past the halfway point in the year. You're starting a rookie quarterback who the organization believes and wants to be the number one guy. You're sitting in your hip pocket with what's most likely going to be a top 5-6 pick in the NFL draft with the Houston pick that you got sitting there. Oh, by the way, your own picks and their second round pick. So you're going to have 3 picks in the top 40. They're primed to be one of the better teams for the next 4 or 5 years. And a lot of it comes to how they've drafted, sure. But to do it the way they have, change quarterbacks, could have been a tipping point for the organization. Continuing to add players in the offseason, forcing the hand of the organization to go and get a Byron Jones and sign him to the richest contract a free agent corner has ever had. To go out and grab Kyle Van Noy from the Patriots in free agency because he fits the scheme. He knows how it's supposed to be run, and he can be the quarterback of the defense. When you put pressure on your organization and your front office, it starts because you've built a culture and an attitude of winning. And listen to Brian Flores talk about his team on a 5-game winning streak. And tell me you're not enthused, excited, and buying into what the Miami Dolphins have right now here in 2020.
However, if it's a win, I'm not sure it's the style. I'm not really in the style. Fashion, as we talked to Armando about earlier in the week, but playing team football, offense, defense, special teams, if that's what you mean, everyone involved, everyone's role is important. Good fundamentals, good technique, and just trying to grind out wins in a tough league. Every game's hard. That's a good. Again, they're like I said all week, their record's misleading. That's a good football team. Herbert's a good player. They got a lot of good players over there. It's tough to move the ball. It was tough to stop them. It's tough to make plays in the kicking game. But, we executed a little bit better than they did and came out with the win.
It's never gloat and look at how much better we are this week. It's never, we beat Denver and New York, and now we can be 8-3 going into a Cincinnati game, should be 9-3. This team, most likely, barring a major letdown, is going to be 9-3 in the middle of December, hosting the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. Just wrap your mind around that for a second. A team that last year traded their starting left tackle, their former, what was Minkah Fitzpatrick, the number 5-6 overall pick in the NFL draft. They traded him in the middle of the season as he's walking into his prime and said, hold off. There's so many different factors in watching and feeling how much better this team is getting each and every week. They're blocking punts. They're having strip sacks for touchdowns. Their defense is scoring more touchdowns than a lot of different offenses are putting together. They've had a forced turnover in each of their 9 games this season. And it's a defensive head coach who's got a very, very veteran offensive coordinator, Chan Gailey, who he says, work with the young kid, do what you have to do, and let me know when he's ready. And as much as I like Ryan Fitzpatrick and he's fun to watch, he's a cool guy and he's got a lot of knowledge and wisdom and all this, they're a much better team with Tua. And as weird as it sounds, because I didn't love Tua coming out of the draft, I didn't think he was this can't-miss prospect that so many else thought he was. He's getting the job done. And when I was looking at their schedule moving forward here, loving what I'm seeing out of Brian Flores. You could tell they were a bad team last year that was really, really well coached because they fought hard. They played the game the right way. And those aren't quantifiable stats. They're not. You can't put that into a stat sheet. They lost 2 division games early in the season. They lose to New England and lose to Buffalo by 3 points. They get Buffalo January 3rd at Orchard Park, New York. Could be snowing, could be sleeting. Lord knows guys could be throwing people through tables out in the parking lot. And that game could be for the AFC East. Because they're going to go into that Kansas City game, like I said, barring a huge letdown, at Denver, at the Jets, home against the Bengals. They're going to walk in against the Kansas City Chiefs, hosting Kansas City. First time that Chiefs team walks into Hard Rock Stadium since winning the Super Bowl there 10 months ago. And they're going to face a 9-3 Miami Dolphins team. Wild to think about. Congratulations to Brian Flores, because I think he's a dynamite head coach that is only scratching the surface of where he's going to get to in this league. And to do it because of a young quarterback, but a style of play, a culture of winning, and a week-by-week attitude. They're all cliches, but sometimes people buy into it. Brian Flores has everybody in that building buying what he's selling, and it's really, really impressive to watch. I'm going to get into this Greg Marshall thing in about 10 minutes from right now because it's as frustrating of a story in the NCAA as I've ever heard. Also, tremendous spin zone that the NCAA is doing as well. But the LA Rams, you want to talk about another team that could have gone from the outhouse and now they're straight up into the penthouse? Sean McVay is another guy that is dialed in as ever. Hear from the Rams head coach next on Sports Map All Night. This is Sports Map All Night. Thanks for being here. My guy Andrew Carlson. Always appreciate him hanging out with us. And you on the free Sports Map Radio app. Thanks for being here as well. LaMelo Ball, is he going to be the number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft tomorrow night? I'm going to hear from Sean McVay in just 1 second, but also we got to get a couple of quotes from this story on ESPN.com about Anthony Edwards, who might be the number 1 overall pick. And if you're a little concerned about a guy being taken that high in the draft, you would only imagine that his primary focus is being the best basketball player he could ever be, right? Well, maybe not so much. We're inside the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios. Need replacement parts and tools for your repair, maintenance, or restoration project? O'Reilly Auto Parts has you covered. Trust the friendly, knowledgeable parts professionals at O'Reilly Auto Parts. They know what it takes to get the job done right the first time. In fact, their professional technicians have counted on O'Reilly Auto Parts for years. Stop by and talk to one of the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly Auto Parts, better parts, better prices every single day. 1-800-224-2004 if you want to join the conversation as well. First, though, let's get into some of this Sean McVay. Their win yesterday or 2 days ago against the Seattle Seahawks in as convincing fashion as Seattle has been beaten this season. For Russell Wilson for the first time this year to look pedestrian at best. Some of the decisions he was making in that game were so head-scratching that it looked like a completely different Russell Wilson than we've watched all year long. And while immediately you go, man, what's wrong with Russ, man? Why? Well, their offensive line, their defense, he knows he's got to score with them. 23-17. It wasn't a complete whooping that was put down on Seattle. However, Russell Wilson was harassed all day long, sacked 6 different times. It wasn't even just Aaron Donald who was getting into the mix on the sacks. Instead, 2 of which came from something called Terrell Lewis. Leonard Floyd got into the mix with 3 on the outside. Former Bears number 1 overall pick. Michael Brockers was in the mix. And, oh, by the way, Jalen Ramsey is one of the best corners, if not the best corner in the National Football League. Like, the construction of how that Rams team looks, just on the defensive side, they have all the pieces to be one of the best defenses in the league. And in the beginning of the year, I'm eyeing up different teams that could possibly be letdown candidates, trying to, be on top of, there's some possible regression, which is everyone's favorite trigger word. Little did I know the regression was going to come in the form of the Houston Texans. Anyway, this Rams team was one that I thought could be possibly a sleeping candidate to be one of the worst teams in the league. You didn't really know what Jared Goff was. He's definitely limited, but guys like Sean McVay get the best out of their players, get the best out of what they have. And Sean McVay, being an offensive guy, being an offensive guru, the genius as he was sold to us when his team went to the Super Bowl, sometimes you just got to lean on your defense, lean on what got you there. And when they went to the Super Bowl, yeah, it was Todd Gurley being the best running back in football, being the MVP, but they did it because they had one of the best defenses in the league, and you could just lean on the run game, lean on your defense, and they were going to get wins for you. This Rams team seems to be doing more of that in 2020 than they did in 2019, where it was, we got this offensive guru, we got this mastermind, we got this young quarterback with a big arm in Jared Goff, 2 nice wide receivers in Woods and Kupp. Let's throw the ball all over the place and outscore people. Instead, Sean McVay's team makes a statement not by scoring 40 and out-dueling Russell Wilson at his own game, but playing the way the Rams are built, and that's on defense. And Sean McVay thinks they made a statement on Sunday with their win over Russell Wilson.
I think it's a great opportunity to be able to continue to build and grow from. This is a great offense. That is someone that we have a tremendous amount of respect for, Gary, but our defense has been stout all year. You can only play the teams that are on your schedule, and these guys have done a great job answering the bell week in and week out. The turnovers, And really, I mean, the second half play, I mean, I can't say enough about our coaches' adjustments. And really, they were outstanding from the jump, but really just to be able to make some of those adjustments. You see some of the looks that we get protection-wise where guys are unblocked, unabated, right to Russell Wilson, and we're still being able to play with some good numbers on the back end. I'm just so impressed and so pleased with them. But now we got to keep it going, and we got a great opponent again in the Buccaneers on Monday night coming up.
The Rams got a little bit aggressive, a little bit excited, as many organizations do when you get that taste of the Super Bowl, when you get that sweet nectar of postseason success, where you just want to consume all of it so quickly that taking a step back and calming down, realizing how good one unit is, realizing how good their defense was, and seeing that their offensive line was maybe more of the reason why their rushing attack was as prevalent and as dominant as it was a couple of years ago. They've taken a step back. They've reallocated some of their assets into their defense. Go and get some more playmakers to help out Aaron Donald. Bring in the best cornerback in the league. The trade compensation is tough, right? 2 first-round picks for Jalen Ramsey, but you're not taking a Jalen Ramsey when you're picking 28th in the draft. You're just not going to be able to do it. So they've mortgaged a ton out in Los Angeles to, I think, capture the fan base, right? When you move back over to that market, you had to win in Los Angeles to grab eyeballs and fans. Something that the Chargers haven't done necessarily since they've moved back. Now into SoFi Stadium, they got the quarterback. I think they have the head coach. A lot of people don't really think so, but they're starting to move in the right direction there with the Chargers. The Rams just happen to have a monstrous head start because they looked at the market they were in, looked at the team they had,
40 seconds.
Changed up their offense, went with the 3-headed monster of the running backs with Cam Akers, Darrell Henderson, Malcolm Brown. Lean on the big boys on that offensive line and play into the limitations of Jared Goff maybe a little bit, but let that defense roll. And we talked about Arizona a little bit earlier in the show. Rams and Cardinals might just be the 2 best teams in that division. And the Cardinals can maybe give a little bit of a nail into the coffin of the Seattle Seahawks and hand them their 4th loss in 5 games. Greg Marshall is done in Wichita, Kansas. We'll tell you why next on Sports Map All Night. Yeah, just totally bypass that last cut.
Rocket Camp. You can
Sports Map all night here with you on Sports Map Radio, the Sports Map Radio Network. NBA draft tomorrow night. I am disappointed for these guys that are going to get drafted tomorrow night. Andrew Carlson, I'm Bill Schmidt. Andrew, for the dudes that aren't going to be able to walk across the state, and I get it, man, so much has been lost here in 2020, so much normal and the things that we love so much about about sports, and I mean, hell, and any walk of life, things have been taken for granted, and things that we knew and loved are no longer here and no longer maybe a part of the everyday life. But for the guys that have worked so hard to get to where they are, to be a top 5, top 10, top 15 pick in the NBA and not be able to walk across that stage, shake the commissioner's hand, take the pictures, that stinks, man. I'm going to miss those moments. And we miss that a lot with the NFL draft as well. However, I'm interested to see how this NBA draft rolls on here tomorrow night. But the at-home look and feel for the NBA draft, I don't think it's going to be as captivating as the NFL was, primarily because we're not going to get Adam Silver sitting on his couch eating a bag of M&Ms and slowly but surely leaning farther and farther back in his recliner, and his eyes slowly but surely getting closed more and more and a little bit redder as well. That's the part of it that I'm really disappointed with, that we're not getting your boy Adam Silver at his house like Roger Goodell got all comfy in his chair this past year.
You know, something tells me Adam Silver's probably not the guy to act like that anyway. He also doesn't have 7 rounds to go through.
And that's a good point. That's a good point. Because Roger Goodell, you could tell a few different times, was like, hey, straight up, we're done with this, right? There's a reason why Roger Goodell does night 1 and then says peace. I don't know that he's ready to do all 3 days like he did again last year or this past year ever again. And Mark Tatum, the people's champion, will bring the second round to you. It's all going to emanate from the ESPN Megaplex there in Stanford, or in Bristol, Connecticut, excuse me. And it's going to be good. I'm excited to see how it plays out and how it works. But yeah, well, what would you think Adam Silver, like, comfortable looks like? Because these owners of NBA and NFL teams, it's always blown my mind that you're in your own suite, you're in your own stadium, you're watching your team. Does anybody want to wear a pair of jeans and a sweatshirt? Like, no, we're all going to rock the collared shirt and maybe a tie, maybe a sport jacket. Like, that's not comfortable for me. Granted, I'm 300 and sweatpants are as much of dress pants as possible for me. Like, what do you think Adam Silver comfortable exactly is?
Man, I don't know if he's got comfortable in his locker.
That's true.
100%.
That might not be a club he's got in his bag.
Like, I just don't know if he's got it. He strikes me as someone who's always just sort of active, antsy, and agitated.
Antsy, active, and agitated. That's a great explanation of a lot of different people. A lot of college basketball coaches, I think, are also antsy, active, and agitated.
All the alliteration there, all A's.
I loved it, man. All 3 of which you might be able to describe Greg Marshall as. Antsy, active, and definitely agitated. Also aggravating. So the story, Andrew, you and I talked about a little bit a couple of weeks ago when it came out. I want to say it was Jeff Goodman was the first guy to bring the story to light at the Athletic and Stadium Sports about Wichita State men's basketball coach Greg Marshall and the Wichita State Shockers. A lot of people are aware of the program. Fred VanVleet, the alum, they've been so prevalent these last few years. He's got over 300 wins, 331 and 121 in the last 13 seasons that Greg Marshall has been the head coach at Wichita State. But you and I talked about it a lot a couple of weeks ago when it first came out, that Greg Marshall reportedly was under investigation for the physical abuse and mental abuse behavior towards Shocker players. And the entire expose talks about At one point, Greg Marshall punching a player in the back of the neck, putting one player in a proverbial chokehold at one point, frequently berating team members. And this is all worded and verbiage from the initial reports. But earlier today, Greg Marshall finally steps down, and he is gone from his contract. No longer will be the head coach of the Shockers there at Wichita State. A lot of people for a long time since they made the Final Four, the conversation was, I wonder why this guy doesn't, go and get a bigger job, right? Because whenever a smaller school takes those steps and wins in the NCAA tournament, it's always, when is this guy going to go take on an SEC school or a Big Ten school, right? Shaka Smart at VCU, he was taking every job known to man if it was if Twitter was in charge of him and his career decision making. So when Greg Marshall didn't go and jump at a different job, I didn't really raise an eye. I thought, oh, he's comfortable where he is, making a bunch of money, coaching in Kansas. People love basketball in Kansas. Makes sense. Then this whole expose and investigation is launched internally at Wichita State about Greg Marshall's confrontations with players. Today, the school agreed to a contract settlement of $7 million and $7.75 million to be paid out over the next 6 years to Greg Marshall. And I can't stomach a guy in that position. One, if this investigation is true, and if the findings after the conversations with your external independent investigator, they come back and show misconduct of physical abuse of college kids while you're playing basketball, while you're coaching basketball, while parents are sending their kid to learn the game from you. Andrew, you and I were just talking about what college does for people, right? And how it's such an impactful time in a person's life, a young person's life. You're so impressionable at that point in life. For Greg Marshall to stroll into retirement at 57 years old, I don't know that he gets another job after this, to let him walk into retirement with an extra $7 million in his pocket to buy him out of his contract and allow him to resign is just the worst kind of message I think the NCAA could possibly send. And I know that this is an independent school decision, right? The NCAA really hasn't gotten involved with this. I don't know how this gets brought up and this story comes to light. You find out that there's an internal investigation. I don't know what Mark Emmert and the folks at the NCAA are sitting on, what else they need to do to launch their own investigation into it. But to allow this guy, one, to resign himself, and people can call it semantics all you want. I'm just telling you what it is from my vantage point, my viewpoint. You allow that guy to resign instead of being removed, being fired. I don't know if it's too harsh, right? We're not correcting in red pen, and so many people in older generations, Andrew, want to call young people soft and they don't correct in red pen because it's a little bit demoralizing to people's self-confidence. Watching this cat walk off with $7 million in his pocket after punching kids, using slurs against players, embarrassing guys across the sport. There's a level of coaching where, you gotta be a hard ass, right? There's hard-ass coaches out there. And frankly, a lot of players respond positively to that. Once it turns to striking a kid, guy needs to be fired, gone, and that needs to follow him on his resume. Resigning from a team just feels so soft to me in this sense. For the NCAA not even to launch their own investigation is as disturbing as I can't even put into context how embarrassing that is for the NCAA. As this is out there, people are talking about it. It's all over the circles of the league. Players that are in the league don't want to comment on it because, well, it happened. It is what it is. Because those kids don't need to go back and talk about it. It happened. You got 15 different accounts of it. Instead, we want to rip and talk about different generations and, young people in this world needing participation trophies, and everybody gets orange slices after the game. Newsflash. Kids aren't asking for participation trophies. Never did I ever, as a young person, walk after a game and say, hey, man, where's our 5th place trophy? It's the parents that do that. That say, oh, it was you tried your best, Johnny. Instead, it's always, we're blaming the kids for it and blaming the young generation for it. It's the folks in charge that were allowing it to happen. We're the ones that put those plans in place. Fire this guy, get him out of the league, and the NCAA needs to be a part of it. They need to be the reason it happens. And instead, we're in the midst of a pandemic where 40-something million people lose their job because, well, the company's downsizing. And, oh, you can go and collect unemployment. Okay, thanks. Appreciate it. As somebody that lost a job in the middle of a pandemic because of no performance issue, nothing that was noticeable, nothing that could be pointed to as a reason why, other than the company's losing money. Wichita State was making money off of Greg Marshall, I understand. Basketball program brought in countless millions of dollars to that university. But now the guy has embarrassed the name. And when you think Wichita State, I don't know about anybody else. I can only speak about how I feel in my own opinions. I'm going to think about this every single time I hear Wichita State. So as much money as he may have made you in the last 13 years, he's brought 50 years of embarrassment to the name. I don't know how you let that dude walk out and resign and a contract settlement of $7 million to be paid out over the next 6 years. I'm no athletic director. I'm no president of a university. But all I know is you can get fired for cause across just about every profession in the world. And if punching a kid in the neck who's 19 years old on your campus isn't cause, then I don't know what is in the NCAA. And it's an embarrassment that the NCAA wasn't a part of this investigation. That it was some external company in Kansas. Talk about a spin zone for the NCAA. They did a really good job of it. We'll tell you next with the NCAA tournament that money rules everything around here, and it continues to in the NCAA. More next on Sports Map All Night. Welcome back. This is Sports Map All Night. Thanks for hanging out with us. Appreciate you being here. NCAA, great spin zone. How about this? Their PR department does deserve a little bit of credit for this one, as much as I just cannot fathom how Greg Marshall walks out with an extra $7 million after punching a student athlete in the back of the head. The NCAA tournament announced earlier this week that the NCAA tournament is going to be played most likely in a singular location, possibly Indianapolis. So in the beginning of college football season, oh no, you can't bubble student athletes. Well, how is it right for student athletes to be on campus if it's not safe for players and all students? Pretty good spin zone that the NCAA is going to be able to put on this thing and have a de facto college basketball tournament bubble. But instead, we're going to have it all in one state. It's going to be great. We're going to have all these kids in an epicenter of college basketball. I'm telling you, PR department really deserves some credit, because that was putting some lipstick on it. Being able to say, and don't get me wrong, I'm thirsting for the NCAA tournament. But if you can't do the NCAA tournament the way you do the NCAA tournament, maybe you shouldn't be having it. They just can't lose another $100 million. Makes a whole lot of sense. All right. Thanks to AC. Always a great job. Jabari Davis killed it. Top 5 Tuesday was great. We're back tomorrow. This is Sports Map Radio. Peace.